A belief that exists only when life is easy is not just yet fortified a belief, it's a preference. Today, let's just talk about your beliefs. There's this balance that can be difficult to maintain. It's just having beliefs strong enough to guide you through your life while maintaining and remaining humble enough to learn, grow, and admit when you're wrong. If your belief is grounded in lies or just absolutely false or incorrect, you get set on a path where you're so far off your course. Your belief should be strong enough to guide you, and your humility should be strong enough to let you know when it's time to grow. All right, let's go. If you're tired, not feeling fit, tired, just not having to focus, tired, just not having the life that you deserve. This is the place to be. I'm Jason Yarusi. Today, let's just talk about your beliefs. There's this balance that can be difficult to maintain. It's just having beliefs strong enough to guide you through your life while maintaining and remaining humble enough to learn, grow, and admit when you're wrong. There's really a couple sides out there. There's people who just honestly have no beliefs. And you see these people because their beliefs are anybody else's beliefs, right? And they change on a dime, right? They hear something, right? Ultimately, they're all over the place, top-sided, lopsy, all over one way to the next, just never having their own opinion. Right? What do you think, right? That's a great question, when in fact, it's only pushing off what they have in their life, which is not being able to make a strong decision. And then there's the other people, right, whose decisions are so strong, they're so put in like a horse with blinders on, where they actually never can even hear, right? Because they're so locked into what they think. They're so locked in and targeted to what they believe that they can't even hear the other side. They can't even hear anything different because they have said this. Now, there's a good in that, right? Because you're locked in and you believe it. But sometimes if your belief is grounded in lies or just absolutely false or incorrect, you get set on a path where you're so far off your course when you finally one day hopefully realize that you're just so far off your course. Your beliefs, they do need to be fortified. And by fortified, I mean they need to be examined, tested, supported by a strong foundation. Like, your beliefs should not change every single time someone disagrees with you, right? They should not disappear whenever you face pressure or criticism, or just you're put in an uncomfortable moment and all of a sudden that you go on a side, right? You see this a lot with kids growing up, right? Where they are one who believes something and they get set into a group who has other beliefs and they feel pressure, right? And called peer pressure, right? And if you believe in honesty, that belief that should survive when telling the truth costs you something. If you believe in loyalty, well, it survives when you're standing beside someone who is just serving as being or becoming an inconvenience for you to keep that loyalty, right? You have to stand strong. If you believe in compassion, it should be present even when you're dealing with a person you cannot do anything for, right? A belief that exists only when life is easy is not just yet fortified a belief, it's a preference, right? We see this a lot in political tension. We see this in societal attention, right? We see this many times with distractions on social media where the focus goes. But having a fortified belief, it doesn't mean that you're closed from just everything else that's actually happening in society. Some people, they think, strength is just never changing your minds, right? I'm resilient and just staying and saying, I am right no matter what. They make this statement, they draw this line in the sand, and they spend the rest of their lives defending it, regardless of what they discover later. Honestly, if you think about that, it can become stupidity. It's not always the strength that you need to show. And sometimes it's just fear, right? It's the fear of wearing the armor to just take it off and be brave enough to say, you know what, I was wrong. I was wrong. We may fear looking inconsistent. We may fear that someone else just understood something way better than us, right? We see that a lot when we're in meetings or presentations, that no one wants to raise their hand to ask the question that they need to ask because ultimately they don't want to look silly or stupid or be the one that doesn't know, right? We may fear that changing one belief will make us question every single thing we stand for. But none of us begins life knowing everything. In fact, if we look at the world as a whole, we know very little. We know very little, but many times we walk around like we know everything. We have to learn from experiences from other people, from our failures, from our discoveries, previous generations that had just never had the opportunity we do, right? We have to look at what they faced and how that struggle fortified them and how we can use that in our world today. If there is new and credible evidence that shows that we were mistaken, there's power in admitting it. That does not make us look weak. It demonstrates that we have a commitment to the truth. And that truth is stronger, right, than our commitment to just holding the line. There's a simple question we can occasionally ask ourselves. What evidence would cause me to reconsider my belief? Think about that. What evidence stands for us that could be present or presented that would just make me question everything? We see this a lot in people who are non-believers in faith or in God, right? Where one day they find God, right? They find the Lord and they say, I was always closed off to just the idea or just I had a belief. And one day I was presented with this and it showed me the way. If you're honest in answering that there is nothing, well, you may no longer be defending a belief. You may just be protecting your identity, right? If that's your part, that if you say, well, there's no evidence, right? There's absolutely no evidence, right? You may be sticking to just the person that you believe that you should be, right? More in fact than just standing on looking for the truth. It can be dangerous if, beliefs are supposed to help us understand reality and we're so forced on just trying to preserve who we are. Imagine using like an old map. And you see this sometimes, right? You see this like when Google Maps doesn't update quickly and you go to turn, right? And you turn to where now, in fact, there's no longer a road or the road is a detour, right? You're using this old map by traveling through the city and it's changed, right? The map, it guided people, right? In the past, right? Oh yeah, look at that map. Okay, it worked before, but now you have roads built, you have bridges closed, new routes, and they've appeared, right? Respecting the old map, and you could say, right, that was my belief before, that was my identity, so I'm just going to go forward, right? I'm going to drive right through this house because that's where the road is, right? It's like that Office, the one episode of The Office where they're on Google Maps and it's saying go to the lake, and you say, well, that's the way it's going, right? And they drive right into the lake, right? Many times that's what we do with our belief, right? You don't have to drive into the wall. You can accept that before that belief existed, but now there's the opportunity to look at a new belief based on new evidence and new information. You can appreciate what the previous knowledge gave you while just updating your direction and really just the information you have at hand. Now, of course, we should not just accept every new claim immediately. That's not what this podcast is to serve. It's being open-minded to the fact that evidence can exist that can prove not always that we're wrong, but maybe that the fact that we're in the hill we're standing on is not completely the highest hill. Or we're just standing on the wrong hill and we have to go down the hill and walk up, to the next hill 100 feet over. It's the new information. It just has to be examined. And we should ask ourselves where it came from, right? What evidence supports it? And you need to see this a lot in life when you're taking advice, right? When you're taking advice, you have to ask, who is this advice coming from? And where is their basis coming from, right? And with that, you can accept really the source of the information to whether or not you should really adapt to listen to this person or just, take it politely. Our goal is it's neither blind acceptance nor just automatic rejection. It's just an honest evaluation of what life can be and what lessons there are. There's also, certain principles such as human dignity, integrity, responsibility, and compassion that can remain at the center of our lives as just our understanding of particular issues develops. Our foundation, it can stay firm while our structure improves. When you discover you were wrong, you just say clearly, based on the information from what I understood before, I believe this. Now I have learned something new and I need to correct myself, right? Because there's new information available. So there's new things that I can look at in my life. And if you think about that sentence, that doesn't destroy your credibility. It actually makes you more credible because you're thoughtful in the eyes of people. It strengthens you. And if an honest correction tells others that you care about getting things right, then it's going to serve you in the future because people are going to understand that you are one to trust because you trust what's available for you to make better decisions going forward. And we should also extend grace to people who change their minds in good faith. I mean, we can't humiliate everyone who just goes and admits they were in error. We all make mistakes. We're all sinners, right? We've all done this in our life. And so to do that, right, we have to create a culture where defending a falsehood feels safer than acknowledging the truth. That's not the right choice, right? We have to say, okay, the truth sets you free, right? That's why that phrase is there. But so many people stand on the line of falsehoods and go to bat as if they would die for them. When in fact, if we could just have open conversations, we may not ultimately agree on every point, but there will be a lot better communication and the world will grow together. Growth requires room to revise. And so you have to fortify your beliefs, knowing that you believe what you believe, and that's great. And you have to stand there strong, but you constantly have to test your beliefs, right? Through the experiences you have, through the reflection, through the conversations, through additional study. And it doesn't mean you abandon your principles simply because your following becomes difficult. You may have to hold the line, right? Because you know and feel that you are right. And it may be you versus 100, 1,000. And that's fine, because ultimately over time, some of those people will discover that you actually were right. And some will hold the line because that's of course, the perception of their reality. You have to leave a door open for learning, and you have to listen to people whose experiences differ from yours. Ask difficult questions, examine new discoveries, recognize your biases. And when that evidence, genuinely just calls for a change, have the courage to change. Stand firmly. Never become a rigid person that can no longer run towards the truth. A strong mind, it doesn't just lock itself into a room. It's well built with just a solid foundation that's opening windows, that has enough light coming in that can just help us understand and see when it's time to rearrange the house. Be grounded, be curious, be courageous enough to say, I was wrong, but be stern and have the backbone to stand your ground when you know you're right. Your belief should be strong enough to guide you, and your humility should be strong enough to let you know when it's time to grow. All right, that's what I have for you today. If you can look at your podcast today, and if it's saying follow, right, and doesn't have a check mark there, give us a follow. It helps us continue to get this show out to the masses. And if you can do us one little thing, go down there and leave us an honest rating and review. It continues to help this podcast get out to the people like you who needs to hear more about this. All right, that's what we have for today. I'm Jason Yarusi. Let's do this.